Coming up on 5 Minute News. Report finds Trump delayed $20 billion in aid to Puerto Rico. High Court moves away from leniency for minors who murder. And UK apologises for racism in memorials to World War I dead. It's Friday, April 23. I'm Anthony Davis. The Trump administration delayed more than $20 billion in hurricane relief aid for Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, according to a report by the Housing Department's Office of the Inspector General. The efforts to deliver recovery funding to the island were unnecessarily delayed by bureaucratic obstacles, according to the 46-page report. The hurricane, which hit the island in 2017, killed thousands of people and left thousands more without electricity or water for months. One of the main hurdles was the requirement imposed by the Office of Management and Budget, which established an interagency review before grant approvals, according to a report from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The process, which was never before required for allocating disaster funds, prevented HUD from publishing its draft notice of funding by the target date. However, investigators did not have access to the former HUD Secretary Ben Carson and other political officials. The investigators were also denied or delayed access to HUD information on several occasions. In February 2020, the Office of the Inspector General received a request from Democratic senators asking the office to conduct an inquiry into whether delays in HUD's release of the disaster recovery funds for Puerto Rico violated the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. The agency stalled the release of the disaster relief aid in 2019 and imposed additional restrictions on how the island could access the funds. The agency cited corruption and financial mismanagement concerns for the blocks. Hurricane Maria hit hundreds of thousands of homes on the 20th of September 2017, and many were still living under blue tarps 3 years later. The Supreme Court made it easier on Thursday to sentence minors convicted of murder to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a ruling that reflects a change in course driven by a more conservative group of judges. In a dissent, a Liberal justice accused her colleagues of gutting earlier decisions that said life without parole sentences for people under the age of 18 should be rare. The current case, which involved a Mississippi inmate and a crime committed when he was 15, asked the justices whether a minor has to be found to be permanently incorrigible, incapable of being rehabilitated, before being sentenced to life without parole. In a 6-3 decision that split the justices along ideological lines, the court said no. The ruling followed more than a decade in which the court moved gradually towards more leniency for minors convicted of murder. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, writing for the majority, said previous decisions only require a judge to consider an offender's youth and attendant characteristics before imposing a sentence of life without parole. Kavanaugh rejected a more demanding standard. The court's 3 Liberal justices dissented, with Justice Sonia Sotomayor writing that the decision guts prior cases in favor of minors. Sotomayor called the decision an abrupt break and an abandonment of those cases. Sotomayor also said that almost all the almost 1,500 juvenile offenders serving life without parole sentences wanted the opportunity at some point in their lives to show a parole board all they have done to rehabilitate themselves and ask for a second chance. British authorities apologised on Thursday after an investigation found at least 161,000, mostly African and Indian military service personnel who died during World War I weren't properly honoured due to pervasive racism. It said that number could possibly range up to 350,000. The investigation found that those service members were either not commemorated by name or weren't commemorated at all, according to a report commissioned by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. Between 45,000 and 54,000 other casualties were commemorated unequally. The treatment of these soldiers who served in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East contrasts with that of the men and women who died in Europe. It also violates the principle that all war dead should be remembered in the same way, because they all made the same enormous sacrifice. The Commission was created in 1917 to ensure that all who died in the service of the British Empire during World War I were identified and properly honoured. Its responsibilities were later expanded to include those who died during World War II, and it now oversees the graves of 1.7 million men and women who died during the two wars. In Europe, the Commission attempted to identify all of the dead and bury their remains under identical white headstones that still dot cemeteries from France to Turkey. The names of those who couldn't be identified were recorded on mass memorials. You can subscribe to 5 Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5 Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen Podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.